The Philippines is a culturally diverse country with an estimated of 14 to 17 million indigenous ethnic groups. They are the descendants of the original inhabitants of the Philippines. They were not absorbed by centuries of Spanish and United States colonization of the Philippines archipelago. In the process, they have retained their customs and traditions. Indigenous people are mainly concentrated in Luzon, Mindanao, and in Visayas.
Indigenous people in the Philippines have retained much of their traditional, pre-colonial culture, social institutions, and living practices. In general, they live in geographically isolated areas with lack of access to basic social services, opportunities, major economic activities, education, or political participation. In contrast, commercially valuable natural resources such as minerals, forests, and rivers are found mainly in their lands, which makes them continuously vulnerable to aggression against development and land grabbing.
Story about indigenous people. Indigenous people are often marginalized and face discrimination in countries' legal system, leaving them even more vulnerable to violence and abuse. Indigenous human rights defenders who speak out face intimidation and violence often supported by the state. The number of indigenous people in the Philippines is unknown but estimated by between 10% or 20% on the country's population. It has praised for its support for the cultural integrity and indigenous people, the right of their lands, and the right of self-directed development of these lands. The term indigenous, when applied to the Philippine population, can be deceptive misnomers, connoting alien migrant population who have over time become the majority ethno-linguistic and cultural group in the thereby passing indigenous of these ranges of the social control inclusion such as the Americas Medal.
One of the common characteristics of indigenous people is their way of close attachment to ancestral land, territory, and resources. The beauty of it, indigenous people are brave enough and willing to die for their traditions, culture, just to inherit to their own kin and to spread it around the world. Indigenous people are inheritors and practitioners of unique cultures and ways of living. Nearly 70 million depend on forests of their livelihoods, and many more are farmers, hunter-gatherers, and pastoralists.
As being indigenous vary depending on nationality and culture. In its modern context, the term indigenous was first used by Europeans, who used it to differentiate the indigenous people of the Americans from the European settlers of the Americas. People are usually described as indigenous when they maintain tradition or other aspect of or in early culture that is associated with the first inhabitants of a given region. Indigenous people homelands have historically been colonized by larger ethnic groups who justified colonization with beliefs or racial and religious superiority land used for economic opportunity. However, in Asian Africa, definition of indigenous status have been either rejected by certain people or applied to minorities and oppressed people who will not be considered indigenous in other contexts. Those population figures are less clear and may fluctuate dramatically.